Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all, and thanks for coming. And my name is Paul Vincelli, and I'll let our Assistant Director take the mantle and introduce us. And so, and Candace, I guess you'll start, and then Matt and Jonathan next, and then folks, our guests, will ask you to just self-introduce as part of that introduction. So, Candace.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Pollock-Moore. I'm the Assistant Director of the Southern Region SARE program and also the grant manager for our 3 small grant programs. And I'm just going to give a little bit of an introduction to the SARE outreach team before we get started. So a little bit of background on what the SARE outreach team does is that we visit with stakeholders in the southern states each year. Stakeholders, by stakeholders we mean administrators, faculty, extension agents, staff within the land grant universities, and then also NGOs, farmers, and other stakeholders outside of the university system within the community. And the purpose of those visits is to raise awareness of the SARE program in terms of the grant opportunities that we provide for sustainable agriculture research, and also with the educational resources that we have available for your use in your community. In addition to that, we also work with those stakeholders in each of the southern states to collaborate together to try to address some of the challenges and issues that you all might be facing with regards to furthering sustainable ag in your communities. So that's the purpose of our meetings for the stakeholders here in South Carolina over the next 2 days.
So Matt and Jonathan.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I welcome the faculty and staff that have joined. This is an outreach effort by the the Southern SARE administrators to try to pump up South Carolina participation a little bit and get y'all to be submitting more grant proposals and hopefully do that by understanding the programs. So I'm glad that they're taking this initiative, and I'll turn it over to Jonathan to go from here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Wyndham. I'm the program assistant for the South Carolina SARE program, and I'm an extension associate here at the PD Rec in Florence. So at this time, we're going to do individual introductions, and I'm just going to read down the participant list. So if you would just state your name and introduce yourself. So we'll start with Daniel Whitehead.
Hi, my name is Dan Whitehead. I'm an associate professor of organic chemistry at Clemson University. I'm here because I'm interested to learn more about your grant programs. Part of what my lab studies is renewable materials for pollution remediation. We have a fair bit of funding from some agricultural groups, including the rendering industry and some South Carolina Department of Agricultural funding. So I'm interested to hear what opportunities SARE has. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Benson.
Hi, I'm Eric Benson. I'm extension specialist and actually professor emeritus at Clemson University. I'm a little odd. I work in urban entomology, so mostly working with the pest control industry, researching cockroach, termites, ants, anything that impacts people where they live, work, and play. But again, wanted to become more aware of the opportunities.
Thank you. Stephen Piers.
My name is Stephen Piers. I'm the extension specialist for forest management at Clemson. The research I engage in is mainly with herbicide applications as well as hardwood management. And I'm in the class. So far, I've struck out on every grant I've ever written. So I'm hoping to get some insight to be more successful and see what all y'all might have to offer.
Thank you. Joe Maha.
Yeah, my name is Joe Maha. I work here at Clemson University at the Edisto Research and Education Center. I'm also affiliated with the Department of Ag Science. My purpose of joining is just to look at, I'm interested with your funding and I'm not sure if I'm a good fit to this call for funding for SARE, but yeah, just.
All right, well, thank you. Hopefully we'll find out if you are. Jose Barriero.
Yes, my name is Jose Pellero, and let me start this video here. Yeah, my name is Jose Pellero, and I'm an assistant professor for Clemson University. I also work at the Edisto Research and Education Center. My area of work is irrigation, agricultural water management. I would like to see what's new with this program and to see what opportunity there is in this program for new projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Julie Northcutt.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Northcutt, and I'm a professor in the Food, Nutrition, and Packaging Science Department at Clemson University. My background in the area is on the food safety, food quality side, and that includes, but is not limited to, working with produce safety and the produce safety rules. So that's why I'm here today. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Ksenia Gasic.
Unmute. That's a question, $1,000,000 question. I'm Ksenia Gasic. I'm a peat breeder at Clemson University and professor at the Department of Plant and Environmental Sciences. And I check so occasionally the opportunities for funding, but actually never applied. So wanted to learn more about to see if I fit anywhere.
All right, thank you very much. Leah Jenkins.
Hey, I'm Lee Jenkins. I'm in the School of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences. I have been working with colleagues to build mathematical models to do virtual farming. And I've had discussions with Jose on some of the work I've done before, and I'm interested in learning where mathematicians can find funding. We try to resolve problems related to use of water resources in sustaining agricultural environments, agricultural livelihoods.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sakran.
Hi, my name is Uday Kumar Sekran, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow at Clemson University in the Department of Agricultural Sciences. And my area of research is focused on automating irrigation system based on soil moisture sensors. I'm working with Dr. Jose, and I'm also focused on soil health, water quality, and greenhouse gas emissions. So, and I'm here to learn more about the SARE grant proposals and how I can be writing those grants. And that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it looks like Carolina, would you like to introduce yourself, please? Okay. Well, if there's no one else that wants to introduce themselves, I'm going to turn it over to Southern SARE.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to run through the list of our outreach team real quick. The folks that represent this group. Dara Monifa Cooper is our communications specialist, currently based out of the University of Virgin Islands. Patrick Lillard is an NGO representative on our administrative council. David Redditch is the professional development program manager based at the Care Center in Oklahoma. Brennan Washington is our 1890 land grant liaison and limited resource outreach specialist in the region. And then Paul introduced himself earlier. He is our 1862 land grant liaison out of University of Kentucky. And I will switch things over to him.
Okay. Thanks you all for coming. We hope to be of use to you today and beyond. Yeah, as Candace mentioned, my name is Paul Vincelli. I'm a liaison between 1862 land grant universities and SARE. And so, I'm home when I visit a campus, basically. We have hopes or expectations that you can see here on the board as far as what will result from the site visit today, the virtual site visit. And one is a better understanding of SARE by you all and your colleagues. as well as opportunities for grants and collaboration, including nonprofits. The second bullet is understand South Carolina needs. So this is for us to try to walk away with some better understanding of what you need from a funding program intended to enhance the sustainability of food systems. And the outcome, we hope, is a grant program that meets your needs better than in the past. And third is to build confidence in SARE decisions as appropriate, and just help you understand the review process better. And so certainly that is part of what we will talk about today. Next slide. And these are three questions we may return to at the end as we have our open discussion. But there are several questions we hope you will consider providing thoughts about. And one is, what are any missed opportunities for South Carolina with our SARE program? So if you have some knowledge of and history with our program, we'd like to hear about it, and particularly if there's lessons learned. We would like to know how SARE's visibility and engagement can be improved, and any suggestions you have for improving the grants program through SARE. So those are the three. And next slide, please. It is there are 4 regions. I think several of us who are going to mention that point. We're in the southern region, and it's just a pretty map. So we're now talking about the SARE program. So if you would advance again, slides. All right. So the SARE, of course, stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education, and this program is a USDA program. And it's authorized. It was authorized by the 1985 Farm Bill, and currently the program receives about $36 million in funding, spread out through those 4 regions. The goal is to support farmers, and note that the first item, their first group of stakeholders is farmers. So we have as a goal to support farmers, researchers, and educators to explore sustainable agriculture practices. And our primary tool for this is our grants program, although we're more than just grants, but the grants are central to our program, and you're always are interested in them, of course, and so are we. So we'll talk about those grant programs. Next slide. And this is a cute slide. I love it very much. And it's a reminder that anything and everything you all do with food systems is of interest to us because it helps feed our families. And so we thank you for your efforts. And so that's that. Let's move on to the next. So a couple points, a point I want to make about sustainability and food systems is I like to take it back to the beginning and point to the hunter-gatherer food system, which was really in my opinion, the only fully sustainable food system that I know about on planet Earth. But the problem is, of course, that it can't support even 1% of us at the current population, the global population. So that system is obviously out for us. Next slide. And this is the most sustainable food system I've had the pleasure of witnessing. This is in eastern Nicaragua, and this is natives living out there. And what they would do, it's called a slash mulch system. They would cut. That's not mine. I'm not sure what I'm doing there, but this is a slash mulch system where they cut down basically almost all the vegetation and lay it down and allow it to decompose and release nutrition into the soil so that there is some plant growth that can be sustained for a period of time. It's not a high productivity system, but it serves their needs. They don't have any inputs to purchase, and it regrows because it looks very destructive, but they do it in confined sizes, and they allow it to regrow after a certain number of years, and so it reverts to forest again. And so it's a very sustainable system, but again, the problem is that it can only support a limited number of us. So that's not going to solve the problem. And I bring these up because I like for everybody to understand that sustainable agriculture and achieving sustainability is a very serious and difficult task. And so we're going to be working at this a long time, we humans, but we must, and we want to make progress, and you're part of that process, and we appreciate your interest. So next slide. So how do we think about sustainability in the SARE program? This is widely recognized. It's not the only definition, but it's widely recognized as a simple way to boil down the essential qualities of sustainability in food systems. And the top there indicates the economic prosperity or profitability of farms and family farms and farmers themselves. So without that, there is no food. There's no or at least agriculture. So we need that. We also focus on stewardship, which I'm sure you all understand and have a good concept of. And that's an essential pillar of sustainability as well. And then the third is quality of life. And I have to point to myself as probably one of the worst offenders. Over the decades, I'd say we all know that there's a quality of life element to the definition of sustainability, but I must admit, I think if I look back, I probably could do a better job of incorporating quality of life elements into my work in some way. So maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that. But all three of those elements are important, and really probably the most competitive proposals are going to be those that at least acknowledge and can intelligently discuss this triad of the pillars of sustainability. So next slide. Is this my slide?
No.
Yeah.
Take over here.
That's yours. Okay. That's right. Thank you, sir.
So just a little background on SARE. So it was, SARE first started that it was included in the 1985 Farm Bill, and funding first started in 1988. And it had the support from land grant leaders, and deans were involved in kind of some of the regional original legislation. And each land grant does provide some support for the SARE program, which is primarily through kind of the state coordinators. And so the Southern SARE is a little unique in that we have 2 land grants per state. And so we actually have 2 state coordinators for each state in the South. And so both the 1890 and 1862 land grants provide some support for the state coordinators. That level of support varies between the different states. And in the Southern region, it's kind of expected that the 1890 and 1862 land grants are expected to partner. And how those partnerships look varies state to state. Okay, next slide. So I've been on the Southern SARE Administrative Council for 6 years, and it's a really unique federal program. So SARE is divided into 4 regions. We're in Southern SARE. And the great thing is that each region has kind of autonomy to decide how it awards the funding and how the grant programs are formed, or how they're, I guess the topics are focused of the programs. So each region gets the same funding, but how they award it can vary. The Administrative Council, so our Southern SARE Administrative Council, we have 23 members. 12 are agency representatives. So we have some from 1890, 1862, a few programs from USDA. We also have 7 producer representatives, 3 NGO, 1 agribusiness, and 1 quality of life. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind when you're writing proposals, is know that our Administrative Council is very diverse. And so there will be lots of different kind of perspectives reading the proposals. And that's actually something we look at. So the agency representatives on the Administrative Council are appointed by their kind of representative agencies. We have 12 positions that the Administrative Council votes on and approves that nominations. And when we're looking at some of the nominations for those positions, we're really trying to get a diversity of voices on the Administrative Council. So diversity in demographics, in geography, and especially for the producer slots, diversity of operations. So we're trying to get as many voices on the administrative council as possible to make sure we represent our region. And then, so the other thing I think that makes SARE unique is, so within our each region, it has a host institution that's responsible for administering the program. So rather than it being done through a federal agency, it's actually through a host institution. And so for the southern region, that would be University of Georgia. And then we also have the Kerr Center, which administers our professional development program. So, and then jumping back to the administrative council. So our main task is to kind of oversee the direction of the organization or the region, and then also vote on the funding of awards. And so all administrative council members review grants. We do have different committees for reviewing different grants. So we have the professional development committee, the producer committee, project review, which is primarily responsible for the research and education grants. And so subcommittees will review most of the proposals, but then they bring it to the full administrative council to vote on. So again, just when you're writing proposals, remember that you have producer, agency representatives, NGOs all reading these to make sure it's understandable to a diversity of audiences. Right, next slide, and I'll pass it on.
Yeah, so Southern SARE Grants, research and education, as mentioned before, there are these 5 that I'll go through. Research and education, professional development, grad student, on-farm research, and producer grants. And they all have their appropriate acronyms. So the flagship grants are the R&Es, and 400,000 there, 50,000 for the education. The first was for the research. They have their pre and full proposal processes, and the call opens up in March for funding that happens in 2023. The PDP grants, those are like train the trainer. Pre-proposal and full proposal process happens as well, capped at 80,000, and the call for proposals opens in July for funding in 2023. The grad students for masters and PhDs, 16.5 thousand, and the call opens in February with funding the same year, later in the year. The on-farm research grants for ag professionals working with farmers, that's like our mini grant. 20,000 is the amount for that. The call opens in September for funding in 2023. And the producer grants for farmers and farmer groups, 15,000 for individual farmers and 20,000 for farmer groups. And the call opens in September for funding later in 2023. What you will see next is our little map with the South Carolina region there in the South. And since 1988, South Carolina has been awarded $3,280,190 grants, $190 in grants to support their 67 projects. 19 of those grants in producer, 6 in graduate student, 10 in on-farm, 11 from PDPs, and 15 for R&Es. So you can see the amounts that those equated to. And we'll move to the next slide and show you where you lined up with the others. So on their R&E, you were 10th with 15 grants at 2.1 million. For the PDPs, you were about, what's that, 6th with 11 grants, 648,853. And for graduate grants, you were, that looks about 11th. 6 grants at 73,864. And this next slide shows us about the on-farm and producer grants. And for on-farm, you were about 8th with 10 grants at 142,000. And for producer grants, about 9th with 19 at 171,000.
we're going to talk about the actual grant programs now. The first and the biggest one we have is our research and education grants. The research grants are up to 400,000, and there's a small portion that's dedicated to education, 50,000. The education side can directly fund farmer education and training. We look for teams of researchers, interdisciplinary approach, focus on systems, but the R&Es require farmers to be involved. So we actually want to see farmers as part of the project. It has a full pre-proposal and a full proposal. So March, the pre-proposals are released, and then in June, they're due. They are selected in August, and those invited back for full proposals get a notice. The full proposal are due in November, and then the administrative council meets in February to decide which ones to receive funding. And then they are notified after that. The PDP grants are targeted at train the trainers. So the idea is to train someone who then will go out and train farmers. While $80,000 is kind of a limit, we say that's a good, there really is no upper limit, but we can fund more projects if we stay 80,000 and under. It also has a pre-proposal, full proposal process. The target audience is a little different. We go for extension, NRCS, FSA, state departments of ag, nonprofits, where it's appropriate, where their audience is to train other trainers. The timeline is also a little bit different than R&Es. It's shorter. The pre-proposal call is released in July, due in August. Then we select those in October, invite them back, those that are selected back for full proposal development. The pre-proposal is reviewed by the AC-PDP subcommittee. The full proposals have a technical review first, and then they have the AC subcommittee looks at the full proposals for review before going to the full AC. They're due in November, and then the administrative council decides which ones to fund at their February meeting each year.
Great, thanks, David. Okay, I'm going to go through the 3 smaller grant programs that we offer. The first one is the graduate student grants, which are specifically for master's and PhD students at accredited institutions in the southern region who are interested in doing research in sustainable agriculture. This is probably one of our most popular grants that we provide, and it's also very, very competitive. But it is a great opportunity to introduce graduate students to the world of sustainable agriculture. It also helps them build experience in grant writing as they start in their research career. And it helps build that relationship between the student and the SARE program. A lot of times we have had students who have received graduate student grants who have gone on into their research careers as faculty at universities who have utilized the SARE program for their own research interests for funding opportunities, as well as help drive graduate students that they advise to the SARE program for grant opportunities. And in addition to that, the graduate student grants also help build the research portfolio for students just getting started in their careers. Graduate student grants are $16,500 for 2-year projects. And this year, the call for proposal for the graduate student grants will open on February 4th. And they will be reviewed sometime in the summer, and then they will be awarded in August of this year, with grant projects starting on September 1st. Our on-farm research grants are specifically designed for ag professionals like cooperative extension agents, faculty at universities, government agencies like NRCS. NGOs are also eligible to apply. And these ag professionals are required to work directly with farmers in ag research. And of course, for the purposes of SARE, we're interested in that sustainable ag piece. $20,000 for 2-year projects. We consider these mini grants. because they are of a smaller grant type than the research and education grants, and the call for proposals are not as are not as complex as the call for proposals for the research and education grants, and there's no pre-proposal process with the on-farm research grants. We usually drive professionals who are either starting out in their careers, like early career professionals, or younger researchers who have just joined universities, who are wanting to kind of get their feet wet in the areas of sustainable ag research. The on-farm research grant is a perfect grant opportunity for those audiences. A lot of times researchers will also use this grant as a stepping stone into larger grant programs. The 2-year time frame allows them to collect preliminary data that they can use to apply for larger grant projects, such as the R&E grant for SARE, or maybe a larger USDA grant. It does encourage that collaboration with the farmers, so that if there does come a time when you are interested in applying for the research and education grant, you do understand that the importance of that relationship between the farmer and the researcher on those projects, because, you know, as David said, the R&Es do require the three farmer collaborators. It's also a good introduction to the SARE program in terms of getting your feet wet with what we're looking for from a sustainability standpoint, and then also just from a smaller grant standpoint in terms of the requirements. And then it also helps build the research portfolio for those young or early career researchers. The call for proposals for the on-farm research grants open in September, with funding in February the following year. And then our last grant program that we do offer is our producer grants, which are operate similarly to the on-farm research grants, but they're specifically designed for the farmer to apply, either an individual farmer or a farmer group, and then we encourage those farmers to collaborate with a researcher or an extension agent or somebody within a government agency like NRCS to help them on their research project. Not only does it help them in terms of setting up their research experiment and collecting data, but it also helps them in terms of actually writing out the grant proposal. Those are 2-year projects as well, for $15,000 for individual farmers and $20,000 for farmer groups. And the call for proposal release timeline falls along the same timeline as the on-farm research grants, opening in September with funding in February the following year. Now, all of SARE's grants are fairly competitive. So in order, we do provide some tips in terms of what we see that would cause a proposal to be rejected. And following some of these tips would kind of would help to strengthen your proposal and help increase your chances of being funded. So some of the things that we've seen that would have caused proposals to be rejected include proposals that may have strong scientific methods or strong approaches and methods, but they don't necessarily pertain to sustainable agriculture. So the research topics or how they have the research outlined in their call for proposal doesn't fit in with SARE's mission and vision in terms of the 3 pillars of sustainability. Topics that are addressed sometimes have already been thoroughly researched. So the resources out there already exist, so that does not necessarily need to be revisited and funded by the SARE program. And then also conventional research projects that could be masked as sustainable agriculture. So what I mean by that is it could be just a Band-Aid to a conventional way of farming, and not necessarily a transformative way of making a system more sustainable. More specifically, a lot of that has to do with the approaches and methods and the budgets, where with regards to the budgets, the budget expenses don't necessarily align with the approaches and methods, meaning that what the applicant is asking for in the budget does not fall in line with the type of experiment that they're going to be doing or how they're going to be conducting their experiment as outlined in the approaches and methods. The approaches and methods may be poorly described. They're not detailed enough and may not be sound research methods in terms of how you're going to conduct your experiment. And then lastly, the applicant just simply asks for things in the budget that we just cannot fund. So a lot of times proposals will get rejected because of that. And I'll turn it over to Brennan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. So our main goal at Southern SARE is to actually provide grants to advance sustainable agriculture throughout the Southeast. But we do have other ways of helping you to support adoption of sustainable ags. And we do this through our outreach funds. And these are discretionary funds that are designed to help fund outreach efforts around sustainable agriculture. And the funding takes several forms: financial support for conferences, workshops, and field days, assistance with acquiring educational material. We have a program, which I'll talk in a minute about, called our Sustainable Ag Leadership Program, which identifies leaders in their communities and assist them in advancing sustainable ag, and our professional development program, which David will talk back about in a few. Next slide. So one of the things we do a lot of and have done over the years is provide sponsorship support for conferences, field days, workshops, and other educational events. And to be considered for one of these, for this support, it has to pertain to an event in the Southern region. It has to serve farmers or audiences who serve farmers. It has to include an outreach component, and it has to relate to sustainable agriculture. So some examples of some stuff we're recently doing. We are probably going to fund a sponsorship request to help put on the first South Carolina Black Farmers Conference on St. Helena's in March or April, I believe. We also provided some funding for a veterans organization in Gray Court, South Carolina, that's going to be putting on a field day and workshop about blueberry production and propagation. So those are the type of things that we can provide funding for. And I just want to make sure you understand, this is not a grant program. This is money that comes back to us from a variety of grants, or we haven't spent our travel funds. And rather than send that money back to DC, we look to try and repurpose it into sustaining our mission of sustainable ag. So we take applications on a rolling basis, and provided the application to meet our requirements as stated on this slide, and provided we have the money, typically we're inclined to fund them. I can fund up to $3,000 for a single event. Above that, it needs to go up the chain to either executive committee or administrative council. Next slide, please. A couple of years ago, actually, this program, our Sustainable Ag Leadership Program, was born of the COVID pandemic. We started getting some money back that we couldn't do anything with. People weren't traveling anywhere, so there were no conferences to really support. So we thought of this idea: how can we support people in their local communities to help them spread the word about sustainable agriculture? And we came up with this Sustainable Ag Leadership Program. We are currently, currently on our third cohort. We should announce the next cohort right after our AC meets next month. But it champions leadership contributions of historically underserved audiences. Participants receive sponsorship support up to $3,000 to conduct an educational or training project in various areas of sustainable ag. The eligibility is, excuse me a minute. You have to work with historically underserved farmers and ranchers and leadership positions in their communities. Farmer groups have demonstrated leadership contributions, nonprofits or other community groups to serve those audiences. Excuse me, and the funding supports educational training activities, must pertain to sustainable agriculture, and can be in person or online. So once again, this is Miss Alicia Cheveris out of Alabama A&M. Her project was on, I think she was in our second cohort. Her project was on business and financial planning for underserved farmers. In the state of South Carolina, Dr. Najma Thomas, who works with the Gullah Geechee Farmers Cooperative and is with USC Beaufort, did a project around training Gullah Geechee farmers on how to actually become market garden farmers and how to prepare their agricultural activities to sell to market. So those are some of the things that we promoted. This will be our third cohort, and I think depending on how many we fund, will be close to 50 projects that we have funded with this third cohort. And I'm hoping it's something that eventually will provide permanent funding for. So I think that's my slides.
Okay, talk about state PDP state training funds. This is outside of the competitive grant process, but what it is, each state in the South has a coordinator, state coordinator at each land grant university. So in the South, states have 2 land grants, except for Alabama, which includes Tuskegee, but we have 1862 and 1890 land grants. Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands each have 1 coordinator. The model state programs, they receive $30,000 to help fund a program assistant position, which includes 10% indirect, and then $20,000 with 10% indirect for training. Those states, and the only state currently with just a plan of work is Alabama, and they don't have a state coordinator, but they get the $20,000 in training funds. Travel scholarships. PDP does have the ability to offer travel scholarships to attend sustainable ag trainings. This is open to individuals, farmers, usually through the state coordinators. It varies the amount from year to year based on expiring grant funds. Usually we manage this through our state coordinators. Requests that are less than $30,000, I can approve directly. If it exceeds, or $3,000, if it exceeds $3,000, I have to take it before the Southern SARE Executive Committee on their monthly call or the full AC if they're meeting. This is due to the fact that we don't know when these travel scholarship requests come in. So during the year, we constantly have the opportunity to offer those. Mentor farmer travel is allowed. So while it is a train the trainer must be to train the trainer model, mentor farmers or leader farmers can receive the funding to do travel. And it doesn't have to just be in the southern region. It could be travel outside of the southern region to bring new ideas, new concepts, and bring those back and use those for trainings in the southern region. The Fellows Program is managed through the National SARE Office. And what the Fellows does, an extension agent is selected out of each of the SARE regions each year. So there are 4 fellows each year. They go on a 2-year training rotation, and they visit each of the SARE regions, 1 spring, 1 fall training on a tour basis. They also learn about sustainable agriculture throughout the United States and how it is different in each SARE region. They participate in an activity that's developed over time called Reading the Farm. A farm is selected in the region where they're visiting, and they work through discussing with the farmers, learning how it operates, and come up with ideas and recommendations on how to make that farming operation more sustainable. At any given time, there are 4 fellows in the rotation, 4 new class, or 4 that are part of the new class, and 4 that are getting in their last year.
All right, so from leadership to training to travel, SARE offers more than just grants. And there are conference sponsorships, which I'm gonna get to right after the next slide and actually show you a little bit more about that. But just so you're aware a little bit, SARE program provides sponsorship support for conferences, field days, workshops, and other educational events organized by universities, community organizations, NGOs, mentor farmers, and other ag professionals, of course, across the southern region for Southern SARE. And there's also the Learning Center, which you will also see on the website in a moment, because there are lots of publications, including fact sheets, bulletins, and books from building a sustainable business, building soils for better crops, crop rotation, organic farms, Farmer's Guide to Business Structures, managing alternative pollinators, managing cover crops, organic transition, new farmers market, and a whole lot more. Next slide. All right, so in terms of resources and educational materials, at last count, when this was created, that's my rooster, 291 different resources existed specific to the southern region. And you'll note in a few, there'll be a link in the chat for resources. There it goes. And I'll again go on the website and share that with you. So you'll be able to see a little bit more about how that works, how to navigate that site. 53% of producers reported using a new production practice after rating a SARE publication. And 64% of producers said that their SARE project helped them achieve higher sales. So that speaks to the ability of what SARE's resources and educational materials have been able to help with in terms of farmers and others who needed to be able to use those. So as I mentioned, with conference sponsorships, there's some information, and this link will be in the chat for you, or you could just go to southernsare.org and you'll find that in the About Southern SARE area. But you'll see there's some bullets in terms of how to be considered for sponsorship support. And that explains all the things that you need to know. And of course, you can always contact us if you need to know even more than that. But within the southern region, it serves domestic audiences, includes farmer education and outreach components, and definitely relate to sustainable agriculture. Let me move this out the way. All right, and here's that other page I mentioned, resources and learning. So you can do very, very useful searches on this page. And I had just typed in online learning there because it's one of the things that I like to look about. But if you scroll down here on the left side, you'll notice that you can decide which region you're looking in. And the results on the right side will populate once you make changes on the left. So let's go to South. And I don't know, let's pick something else other than audiences. Let's pick a category, education and training. So automatically, whatever relates to the things that are selected over here, and I'll uncheck books for formats, will show up. And that's where these populate. So in formats, that's when you can get in more detail as to what type of format you need: audio, books, bulletins, case studies, fact sheets, so on and so forth. So that's how you'd be able to navigate to find what you need in terms of SARE resources. All right. And the links are in the chat for both the resources and the conference sponsorships. Thank you, Jonathan. Next.
Okay, so as David mentioned, each state has a set of state ag coordinators at each of the land grant institutions that serve as local contacts for those folks in the state who are interested in SARE and sustainable agriculture resources. So in South Carolina, this slide shows your state ag coordinator contacts at Clemson and at South Carolina State University, and Jonathan serves as the SARE program assistant, so he supports both of the state ag coordinators in South Carolina. So yeah, of course, the folks on the call today are more than welcome to reach out to us directly, but also you can reach out to your state ag coordinators if you have questions about grants, about the timeline of the grant, of the release of the grants, or if you're seeking sustainable ag resources for your programming, the state ag coordinators can help you out with that. And then, so that's all we have, and we'll just open it up to any questions that anybody might have about anything, and then I'll turn it over to Paul for next steps.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, as Candace said, we, at this point, we kind of open it up to open discussion. And yeah, see a little bit of a quiz there. So I'll have to go ahead and take that. Please feel free to respond at any point. We would appreciate your input. But back to the open discussion, we realize some of you don't have experience with the SARE program, but you have experience with other grant programs. So, any ideas that you think we should know about how to, do this kind of programming and support people such as yourself with grants and in sustainability, just give us your thoughts, and we'll have a discussion. Oh, raise his hand.
Jump in here and say that I am the Clemson co-coordinator, along with Dr. Adasi at South Carolina State, and Jonathan's on the call. Along with being the coordinator, we do get a little bit of money that we can help seed some trainings. If you got an idea and need something in the short term for a training, something like that, to train the trainer type trainings, we can help support. I also want to say, and Jonathan's good about sending out requests or letting you know, but we have a lot of those educational resources here at the PD Rec. Every year, SARE gives us the opportunity to just ask for a bunch of those publications. So we have a good stock on a lot of those publications, and we also have a lot of thumb drives which contain almost all of the good SARE publications that, maybe it's 2 years, except for the last 2 years. So you want anything like that, let us know. I'm available to talk about big grants and all that, although I do not have anything to do with them, but I can talk to you about ideas and so forth. And we want to see more applications from Clemson and South Carolina State. We want to move up there, and I have noticed that recently several have done graduate grants, and those have worked out well. So think about that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Before I forget too, the Learning Center publications that Matt mentioned that are all on flash drive and also available on the website. I think the PDF form is free, I believe, in all cases. Some of the hard copy books there's a cost for, but the PDFs are free. Is that right, Candace?
That's correct.
Okay. And and serve as a reviewer. I mean, who has time? I totally understand, but that's one way to get experience with the review process here, so that you can do a better job with your own proposals. Just a thought.
I think that Daniel has his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a question about how broadly defined agriculture is for this program. So does it include things like poultry, livestock farmers, and the like, or is it just for crop farmers?
No, we seek topics in all areas of sustainability, crop production, livestock, organics, agroforestry, aquaculture, marketing, any kind of social science aspect. So yeah,
Okay.
it's not confined.
Would that sort of extend to sort of support industries for agriculture, like the rendering industry and feed groups and that type of area?
I would say yes, as long as there's a sustainability component and there's a farmer component involved with regards to the research, and then also to the outreach in terms of how the results can benefit the farmer from a more sustainable aspect of farming.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a good point, Daniel. We don't really see probably as many applications as we like from some of these ancillary industries that are related to agriculture, because I think people think that we're only focused on the production side, but we really like to see some applications from, covering some of the areas you just mentioned.
Okay, and then so does the program provide feedback on pre-proposals, or do you get reviewer comments on declined full proposals, et cetera?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that. Yes, 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 and yes. Yes, the reviewers do provide comments during the pre-proposal process, and then also they do provide comments during the full proposal process for the grants that do require that, and then for the smaller grants where we don't have a pre-proposal process, they do receive the comments from their application. Whether they've been funded or not. So, I mean, if they've been funded, they'll receive comments on their proposal that might help strengthen their research project. Or if they were not funded, they will receive comments from their reviewers on how they can strengthen their proposal if they wish to reapply at a later date.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to put a plug in right there that a great way to get an idea of quality proposals is to serve as a technical reviewer. Actually, that was kind of one of my first involvements with SARE, and you can really start to get an idea of what is a quality kind of proposal that SARE would fund.
This is pure discussion, so I'm going to discuss. I don't really know very much about this aspect, but I work with colleagues at the University of Kentucky that are family and consumer science experts, and food systems have their post-production elements that are of interest to sustainability of food systems. Now, we're not talking about beyond the farm, but has anybody ever tried to push the envelope and go into that area with proposals? Candace and others. David, you've had a long history here.
Say that again.
Well, so yeah, so like if you look at the website on sustainable agriculture, it usually seems to be focused on farming, the production.
Mm-hmm.
But post-production, there's all kinds of things that happen with food, and I'm just wondering if anybody's ever tried to push the envelope and submit proposals in that area.
Not that I'm aware of. The closest I can come is there's been trainings on when you process meat products. There's been training on that, but that's at the front end of that, not like all the way to the store shelf. But I think value added type would depending on how it's set up, I would think if it's especially on putting dollars back into the farmer's pocket with a production system they have, then that could meet the criteria. But I always tell people, please read the call first. And you question whether your idea has merit or not. Once you've read the call and come up with an idea, you can contact those of us that manage the program and run it by us and see. I mean, we can't tell you, yeah, you're going to get funded on. Obviously, that's not our decision. That's the decision of the reviewers and the AC. But we can give you some ideas based on experience and on the calls, whether a particular way you're approaching. A lot of times with PDP, since it's train the trainer, I get calls where I have to explain to people that what they're asking to do is really not train the trainer. And that saves them the time of submitting a project. Or I can tell them how they need to develop it so that it meets the train the trainer model.
Yeah, so contact the program director, basically, you all. Right? Isn't that the takeaway?
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
I have a question.
There's someone on the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. Could you please explain a little bit more about the system approach requirement for this type of grants? The reason I'm asking this, several years back, I tried to put together a proposal for this program, and I found that requirement to have the sustainability requirement is kind of straightforward, easy to meet. for the, people like me who have, are subject matter specialists. But, the system approach is, I found that kind of difficult because you have to, let's say, let's put together an example. If I say, well, I want to try a proposal that focus on the sustainability of water management, for example, then, this system approach, then you have to bring in a team of a lot of people, really, looking at, you have to look at, if you're going to address the system approach requirement, then you have to have a big team of other people. And at the time, the budget was kind of limited. And now I see that you have $400,000 of budget, then that helps. But I remember in the past was something like 200,000, and by the time you put together a large team trying to meet the system requirement, that was kind of hard to meet. So if you can explain a little bit more about what is the system, system approach requirement, or what is it really you're requiring there?
Good. Yeah, let's have a discussion on that. Who wants to kick it off? Yes, go ahead. Somebody. Yeah, I guess I'll start. I feel like it's a tough question, and it's not one I'm particularly comfortable with providing, a detailed response. But I've thought about it and had some, professional experiences. It's a topic I think people look for. Doesn't mean you necessarily have to build the project into, in ways that don't fit for what you're proposing. But I think my experience with this topic is SARE reviewers often want to see the sort of bigger picture projects than the reductionistic type of projects. So I'm a plant pathologist. Let me give you an example. I'm a plant pathologist, so I can bore down on the specifics of this pathogen and how it affects the farm production system and, post-harvest quality and, all the detailed hypothesis testing that you and I can do. And it may be really important, but if it's a very narrow part of the food system, it just may not. It depending on the reviewers of that year, it may not compete well against a project that has a bigger picture view. So that's about as far as I can take it. My colleagues may be able to give you more, or you may have a rebuttal, a perfectly good rebuttal. But that's my first thought.
Well, that requirements pretty much, has prevented me from applying for probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
Right. So maybe I'm the only one that has that issue, but that's something that I think you guys should think about.
It's
preventing a lot of people from applying, and maybe that's playing why you have such a.
Yeah, it came up in the previous. I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting. It came up in the previous session too. So I don't think it's just you. There is a publication that was on the chat that where the systems approach is described, and it's a SARE publication. So that might give you sort of better understanding of language that you could use. I don't think it necessarily means change your project. It just means maybe having some sense of the system's effect of the work that you're proposing. And
well, I would jump in and say,
help us.
I was going to jump in and say that one of the things is that slide Paul had up there with the triangle, where he looked at profitability, environmental, and quality of life. That's kind of that concept of a systems approach where it touches on all those, kind of includes the concept of how all those make the system as a whole more robust, more sustainable.
Yeah, and the research and education grant call for proposal does cover those 3 pillars. So it does ask the applicant how their project fits into those three areas. So you're asked to describe how your project results in farmer profitability, does help support environmental conservation, and then also serve, how does that also support the social science aspect, the quality of life aspect, which for a lot of researchers is also difficult to.
And I also would say that's why SARE puts such a heavy emphasis on farmer involvement, even in the review process as much as in the project themselves. And the reason for that is making sure that the work that's being done has practical application to individuals out in the field and can be utilized by them.
Yeah, I think, Jose, I don't think I think we're all saying one element that's the same, and that is that requirement doesn't necessarily mean, redo your project proposal, but rather just make sure that systems thinking is explicit in the way it's written.
Okay, well, looks like I misinterpreted because at least what I wrote at that time, and that might have been probably 5 years ago. The way I interpreted it was, I'm going to have to bring in economists into the team. I'm going to have to bring, social scientists into the team to meet this requirement. I'm going to have to bring, somebody to look at the environment. And by the time you put that team together with the limited budget that they provided at the time, that was kind of not worth doing. That was my point.
Yeah. That's a good. No, I understand. That's valid. I'm sure it reflects your experience. One of the things that you've touched on, another element for that's important to me. I've been a professor for over 30 years, and I think I've done a lot of good work, but I don't think I've really done a good job of looking back of incorporating elements of the quality of life for farmers, farm families, rural communities. And so I think, my next project is going to involve a social scientist as part of the team. I've become an advocate for that, independent of your particular question. So yeah, it's a good thing. It could be a good thing, actually.
Yeah, and it's probably a good idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. But yeah, that has to be going to the thinking at the time of providing a budget, because I would love to work, bring an economist into the team and the social science into all of that, but that means you have to provide budget for those already. So if you only allow 100,000, it's probably not going to happen.
It's not enough. Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. It's gone up considerably in a few years. So because we weren't getting the researchers that we would like to see.
Right.
So
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Just a quick question, SARE team, as opposed to what's being discussed, or I think it's a really valid conversation to have, and it probably will help many people, as opposed to having to bring in various team members from those other parts of that triad and beyond. Might it not also be useful to utilize a research from one of those areas, whether it's a social science or someplace else, so that you're not necessarily having to have that team member in, but you're able to utilize research in that area, and then that validates it, that works for that part.
Good point.
Yeah, that's valid. That's a valid approach.
Yeah, good.
I'll give it a shot again.
All right, good luck. I hope to hear of your success.
I guess one of the things I think of, to add a little bit to that on systems research, what I think of, I grew up on a farm, and my background's ag econ. What I think of is in terms of we have enterprise budgets in economics, and that looks at one particular crop, focuses in on whether it's profitable, how you incorporate it. Then you turn around and have the whole farm budget. And sometimes you can have an enterprise budget shows a crop's profitable, but when you stick it into the whole farm budget and look at your quality of life in terms of how many hours in the day, it may not work. So that kind of goes from a reductionist enterprise budget to a whole farm or system. Does it fit? That's my way of thinking of systems.
Well, in reviewing grants, I've also thought about that with the 3 pillars, it's kind of, I think most research is trying to increase the profitability of farming, but that doesn't address any of the other areas. And also it's kind of how, just by increasing profitability, does that increase the sustainability of the system? So it's kind of trying to look at the issue in a broader way. And actually, you know, SARE, when it first started out, it was called LISA, Low Input Sustainable Agriculture. And so we didn't kind of want to try to focus on just the inputs, but at the same time, if you can address something from a systems approach rather than having to find a way to address it through more inputs, it's kind of that scope of the system or systematic approach to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Really good. We struggle. I know I've struggled with it, but it's a good question. I hope we've addressed it reasonably well. Other comments? Questions? Well, you've got some very good people. You've got some very good people here in South Carolina and SARE, and including those that could not make it. Joshua from South Carolina State University. What's his last name? Help me out.
Dr. Adasi.
Say again.
Dr. Adasi.
Adasi, yes. Yes, some good people here with Jonathan and Matt and Joshua. Just so, yeah, they'll be glad to try to answer your questions. And of course, they know where we are, and you know where we are as well. So, anything else? Any other thoughts? Matt, anything more to add?
No, I just want to thank everybody for participating, and particularly thank the Southern SARE team for taking the initiative to encourage you all to write more grants instead of just me. I forgot to mention too that when Dr. Redditch lets me know about excess or he's got travel funds, I usually try to send that out to everybody. So keep an eye out for those, because that's an irregular kind of thing. That's it. I appreciate your participation.
Candace, any final comments before we go?
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedule to try to call in.
Thanks you all.